McKinsey put out this article March 10th of 2022 called Cybersecurity Trends Looking Over the Horizon. I thought it was very interesting, some of the things that they highlighted. So let's read this. So basically, the adversaries now are not limited to individual actors, but highly sophisticated organizations. I was reading another article that said that it's ransomware as a service. That's how corporate all of this stuff has become. It's not individual people sitting out. Like these are big enterprises. It's craziness. And so, yes, highly sophisticated organization that are using AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. And the scope of the threat is growing. No organization is immune. I think COVID taught us that. Nobody and no organization is immune. And so the same with cybersecurity and breach. It's becoming like mass enterprise, unfortunately. And then even today's most sophisticated cyber controls, no matter how effective, will soon be obsolete. The world changes so quickly, and it's really interesting. So listen to this. In this environment, leadership must answer key questions. Are we prepared for accelerated digitization in the next 3 to 5 years? And more specifically, are we looking far enough forward to understand how today's technology investments will have cybersecurity implications in the future? Those are great questions. And of course, here's the stats about how crazy it is with how many breaches and 3.5 million cybersecurity positions open worldwide now, all the spending and the increase of all that. So let's talk about there are three trends that with large scale implications. So number one, on-demand access to ubiquitous data and information platforms is growing. So here's the basic point of what they're saying. Data is exploding. Like it's everywhere, right? This is where privacy is going to become such a massive issue. It already is, but it's going to become even more massive. There's just data being collected everywhere. We all have cell phones, we all have Internet of Things devices, everything is connected, and all that data is just being accumulated. So there is just this data explosion. And what do we do with that? Well, guess what? If I have more data to manage, I got more data that can be breached. If I've got data coming from more sources, I got more sources for breach. If I've got data being stored in multiple places, I got more points of being attacked. And so that's really the thing is there is this explosion of data, all different types, everywhere, all of that. And so that's the first one. So what do they say is really the approach to this? And so they're talking about zero trust architecture, which is a total different network design where you basically don't trust the trusted network. There is no trusted network. You don't trust anything. And so you build your controls to have zero trust, just like the name. Also, behavioral analytics, looking for anomalous data, anomalous activity by a user. Either they're doing it on purpose or they're not doing it on purpose, or a device is doing something weird. Like a lot of the new endpoint EDR solutions, they will, if they see files being encrypted, they'll stop it after a few files because that's the signature of ransomware, right? So they just stop it in its tracks and then roll that back. And so there's tools are becoming smarter and smarter, but unfortunately this is big business on the hacker bad actor side, and they're being smarter and smarter, and they're using AI and they're using these high-end technologies to figure out how to be bad. And so we have to do the same to figure out how to combat them. Unfortunately, that's just the world that we live in. And then also elastic log monitoring. So this is the idea of pulling back all of your logging and putting it into a single place, and then putting intelligence to go through that logging and to monitor it and what needs to be flagged. A human being cannot possibly look at all the logs, right? It makes no sense. So we have to put intelligence around this logging, so that way anything that would need to be flagged and need to be dealt with by a human would be alerted and could be tracked that way. So very important, but you can't monitor and analyze something if you don't have it. And so if you've got, and there we got data explosion everywhere. If I've got this SaaS tool and this platform and this mobile thing and this over here, and I'm not pulling all of that back, I can't monitor it all the myriad different places it is. I've got to pull it together and then have my processes around, okay, how do I make sure I get all the right data back here? So that's step one. Then step two, what monitoring and what intelligence am I going to put around it? And then once those alerts fire, and how am I going to keep it tuned to fire the right things? Not too much, not too little, because if you fire too much, then it bogs people down. What is it called? Log fatigue or alert fatigue. So they start ignoring them. It's just human nature. But if I fire too little, then the wrong thing gets ignored, right? So it's finding that balance. And then once that alert gets fired and a human needs to step in and figure out, okay, what do we do here? Or sometimes they can just be automated to shut something down. But still, a human's probably going to need to look at it at some point. Then what's my process there? What's my communication? All of those different pieces, parts. And so that's the kind of things for you to think about. Okay, number two. Hackers are using AI, machine learning, and other technologies to launch increasingly sophisticated attacks. So actually, this is it. Cyber hacking is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, complete with institutional hierarchies and R&D budgets. That's insane. And so what used to take a very long time, of course, is taking a much shorter time because it is big business on the hacking side. It's just crazy to me. I'm just like, get a job, people. But I guess they have a job. Anyway, so what does it say to do this? Use automation to combat increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks. So that's great. Use automation as much as you can through a risk-based approach. This is ultimately all about risk management. That's what cybersecurity is. Risk management. That's ultimately what it's about. You don't want to spend money and time on things where the risk is not high, and you don't want to not spend money and time on the things where the risk is. Okay, I said that backwards. You know what I mean. You don't want to spend money where the risk is low, and you don't want to not spend money where the risk is high. And I see it all the time with companies where they do precisely that. So, but you can't make those intelligent decisions if you don't know what your risk posture is. And so it's very important that you have risk management practices. So that's kind of what this is talking about. And then once you know where those risks are, and you have that risk-based approach, and you understand how you're identifying and mitigating risk, well, then use defensive AI and machine learning for cybersecurity. And the tools are becoming more and more powerful out there, where they literally are learning in real time, hey, this is not looking right, or it's been like this and now this is something different, and the tool is able to step in and shut a lot of that down, or at least at a minimum alert. But you got to have money for those things. Those are high-end tools, right? Now they'll be more commonplace in the next few years, but right now those are still pretty high-end tools for enterprises, not for SMBs. And so you want to leverage as much of that as you can, because there are some of those within reach, but to stay on top of it. If they're using AI and machine learning, well, you know what? We need to be using AI and machine learning to try to combat that and to play on the same field. And taking this risk-based approach, because I can't fix everything. I can't address everything. I just can't. I hear every once in a while somebody will say, oh, we're going to mitigate our risk to nothing. No, you're not. Ever. It doesn't happen. But you're going to mitigate it down to where it's acceptable to you, and that's really the name of the game with this. Number three. Where's number three? Let's see, number three. I lost number three. Here we go. Ever-growing regulatory landscape and continued gaps in resources, knowledge, and talent will outpace cybersecurity. And so many companies are not sure how to identify and manage digital risks. I just said that. If you don't know how to identify and manage your risk, that's where cybersecurity starts. So start there, because it really is just a risk management game. And then regulators are now, because we've been so remiss in handling cybersecurity the way it should have been handled as companies kind of overall, now the governments are stepping in, which is unfortunate, because we should have just done what we know we should have done to protect people's data, right? But that's not how it went down. So now, guess what? Regulators are going to start making laws and going to start making rules similar to what you're seeing in financial services and healthcare for years and years and years. And then that just becomes now all this regulator burden, which, it kind of forces people to do things that they should be doing. But unfortunately, it creates a lot of burden as well. And then guess what? It says gaps in resources resources, knowledge, and talent. Okay, well, then if you don't have talent to begin with to run your cybersecurity program and even figure out what you should be doing, and then now I got all these regulations on top of it, then now I really don't have it, right? And so that's going to be the challenges that's really gonna come. And then privacy is going to be stiffer compliance requirements as a result of growing privacy concerns. Privacy, unfortunately, has been grossly abused over the last decade or so. I won't name any companies, but I'm sure you know which ones I'm thinking of. Grossly abused privacy. So guess what? Now government's stepping in. So that's gonna come, and it is coming fast. And then you get these high profile breaches, and so that forces it too. When you start getting the likes of Microsoft being breached by a bunch of kids, that's a separate video. Then it's time to really buck up and start taking this thing serious, and that's really kind of where we are. But it increases burden to the company, right? Because now I'm trying to run my business. Great. Okay, that's already full time. Now, I'm trying to not be breached. Okay, I don't even know what that means, but I'm trying to do that too. And then now I'm trying to satisfy regulators. It's a lot. I came from financial service banking. Regulation is a lot. So that's a valid point that they bring up. So what are the responses to that? To number 3, which was the increased regulation and lack of resources in the world. Secure software development. So that is baking security into your development from the beginning. It's not an afterthought. You don't get the security guy to sign off at the end. You bring them in right from the get-go of the project all the way through the process. And you adopt secure coding practices, and just through the whole cycle, security is baked in as part of the process. Taking advantage of X as a service. There is lots of X as a service. There's infrastructure as a service, backup as a service. There's vCISO, which is basically cybersecurity as a service. There's all sorts of services out there. And so with resource problems in the world, go find the expertise in a service provider that can help you through that, so you're not trying to figure this stuff out on your own without really any help. And I see companies do that too. I see them not take this stuff seriously. And when they see things like, oh, well, there's not enough resources in the world. Well, this is easy. I can download that, and I can download that checklist, and I can download that policy. I'll be done by the weekend. What's the big deal? Okay, well, the big deal is you have no idea what you're talking about. And this is a whole field. This is an expertise. So don't try to wing this thing. Like, it's great. Don't try to piece part this thing and do it on your own. Like, go find the expertise you need. Hire it internal or hire it external, one or the other. But that's the whole point of this. This is not a game. Like, this is serious, and it's becoming more and more serious every day. And now you start adding the regulation on top of it. Just look at what GDPR did. Their companies are getting big fines for that deal. You don't want to be one of those companies. And so now the game just went up another notch. And so find the resources that you need, hire them internally, or if you can't, because there is a huge cybersecurity shortage in the world right now, then hire them externally. Cybersecurity as a service, and go find someone to help manage that for you so that you can focus on running your business. Would appreciate you liking this video and potentially sharing it to your network so other people can see value in it.